right, so we're gonna take a look at some programming for the CSCS class, and this is the 4th edition for the Essentials of Strength and Conditioning. We're gonna go over a needs analysis, take a look at some programmings, and then give you guys some homework on some stuff that you can do. Now, when it comes to, I'm gonna give you my 2 cents, and I want to get Brock Top on here and talk about his. So the great thing about being a strength coach is that you can work with any body when you really understand human movement. For example, I went to Santa Monica High and met with the head coach for cheer. And I don't know about you guys, but I know nothing about cheer. I made a joke and said that I watched Bring It On, I think, but I couldn't tell you much about the ins and outs of cheer, but I am competent enough to know the needs analysis. And so when you understand that, it really, you can work with anybody. I don't care if you're a ninja warrior, if you're a football player, basketball player. What we do is we take a step back and we analyze the individual. And so there's definitely sports that are more challenging, such as football, because you have a lot of different positions. Obviously, the punter is not going to be doing the same workouts as the lineman. And for the most part, when you work with high school or collegiate level, you're going to have X amount of athletes, and you're going to have different condition states, and you're going to need to be able to analyze them and give them workouts that are going to be beneficial. So the main things that we want to look at, who could tell me the 4 main things about the needs analysis? Diego, Katie, anyone?
Main things about what? I'm sorry.
The needs analysis, what that is taking a look at.
Like specificity?
Okay, go ahead, Diego.
Yeah, just the demands of the sport, movements, bioenergetics, what kind of energy systems that we'll be using primarily.
Okay. And last one. Last thing we want to be looking at is injuries. And so when we design a program for someone, essentially we start with that. What's the demand of the sport? And so football, what's the longest play we can do in football? Is it 106 yards, 108 yards? What is it?
Yeah, kick return could be 109 yards. So which would be,
yards?
Which would be, even if you're at Olympic speed, 10 seconds.
So what energy system are we in there?
ATP PC.
Now remember, with the bioenergetics, it's duration and intensity. It's never just one. Is there an aerobic component to football? Sure. I wouldn't necessarily, and obviously Brock is going to give you his 2 cents. If I'm working with a team, I'm not going to start out practice by running 3 or 4 miles. What do you think, B?
Yeah, that's a huge mistake you see a lot. It's a common before a lot of coaches, I would say it was probably getting studied in labs a lot before the practical application hit. But yeah, that was a big mistake of a lot of conditioning coaches and just regular football coaches, is implementing things like miles and aerobic runs. When you talk about specificity, it just doesn't matter. Like, as Chris said, can aerobics help in football? Yeah, yeah, of course it can help. It doesn't hurt to be in great cardio shape, especially when you're talking about maybe 4th quarter deep in the game. But if you're talking about priorities and things like that, too much aerobics, such as a long run before you're actually going to do anaerobic things such as hit, tackle, move as fast, as quick as you can, which you need to be an optimal football player, then yeah, it could actually do damage. And so, yeah, when we talk about aerobics and priorities, it's not going to be something we're doing at all when skills training is involved, like things like practice, games, obviously, or preseason. But can it be something we're doing in the off season, or when we have more time to focus on other things? Then yeah, it can be implemented. But yeah, it's definitely not something that should be involved in any time of the year where any kind of practice or skills training is going on.
And this is where it gets a little difficult, because I could go to a high school or collegiate team, and with a lot of sport, they're going to look at a prerequisite of, did you play the sport? And most coaches and teams would probably want someone that's played before, thinking that they're going to understand the demands of the athletes that are out there. And it's not always the case. So who do you think people are going to listen to? I don't even know who. Did Pacquiao win over the weekend?
No, he lost.
He lost. Now there's the wives' tales that do you know who his coach is?
I don't.
It's his dad. And I don't know that there's any truth to this, but the wives' tales that I've heard was that at the end of his sessions, not everyone, but a certain amount of them, he would always drink his own pee. And that was something that his dad had him do. And his dad was boxing. And so it just kind of goes down that line. And who do you think Manny's going to listen to, me or his dad? And so the anecdotes are going to carry a lot within sport. And you can even look at a sport like boxing or wrestling, what we're going to take a look at today. And you could beg the argument that, do we need to be running miles for these athletes? And I think that's a fair conversation. I don't know about, what do you think, Brock?
Yeah, I think that when you're talking to these sports, I think that, I always like to think specificity. So do wrestlers and boxers need to be in great aerobic shape? Hell yeah, probably more than a good majority of sports outside of just straight up cross country runners. But yeah, when you think specificity, then is the type of aerobic endurance they need just some kind of steady state, bouncing around? No. And then so I like to think next, what can be something that's still aerobic, but a little more specific? So obviously the sport itself, that, that's giveaways, but even things of the nature, maybe an aerobic activity where they're having to neurally distract themselves. So maybe instead of running a mile, they're running in a short, they're doing a steady state of running thing where they have to, you be cognizant of maybe you're throwing something at them every few minutes, or maybe, things of that nature. So it can be beneficial. Aerobics is obviously beneficial, but yeah, I think especially when you're talking about leading up to a bout, it's not going to be that. It shouldn't be high on the list of priority of things. There's other more specific ways of aerobic endurance that they can prepare themselves more adequately.
I just think of the iconic scenes from Rocky 4 and 5 when he's running up the mountains, and that's pretty common for boxers. Like, they just go out there and they start running. But, we had a great opportunity over the weekend to have a CrossFit instructor come in, and Juan's a badass. He used to be in this class, and you can just take little pieces from even his training and you can make it applicable to a boxer. So when you look at the energy demands of the sport, I think we're at 12 rounds for 3 minutes. It used to be 15, but now it's 12. So, why are we going to be doing a bout that's longer than 3 minutes? You can maybe 3:30, 4 minutes. Sure, you can argue that, but doing, even if you're running a fucking fast ass mile, the world record is 3:43. I don't think boxers are going to be doing that. So it's not that applicable to sport. So you could do something like Juan was. You could do like burpees and just have them do burpees and then come into jumping jacks. And then you have a ball, a med ball, and you throw it at them, and you have to dodge it or throw it back at you. And so then you can make it relative to the sport, and you do it for that time, and you rest for what the demands of the sport are. Rest required. I think it's a minute per round. And then you get back in there and maybe you do some type of circuit with strength training. You're doing push-ups into chin-ups back and forth for 3 minutes, and you rest for a minute. And now we come back to maybe more of an anaerobic component. Now you get them on the bike and you go as fast as you can for 30 seconds, and then you do a plank. I mean, there's so many creative things that you can do, but we encourage you guys and girls as new strength coaches getting into the field. Anytime that you should get out there and observe, but I'm going to go off on a tangent here. One of the interns got a job at Equinox, and he's now a level 2 trainer, brand new. And he was in a meeting today, and I thought it was really great because he said a lot of them were sharing stuff that was wrong. And he's like, I just didn't say anything. I said, nor should you. I think that's great. So like, if you go to a practice and you're going to start working with a soccer team, don't start raising your hand and be, oh, that's wrong. This is wrong. It's like, no, you're just a fly on the wall. You observe, you take good notes, and then you can bring that back and analyze or ask the coach questions. So then you can formulate an idea or learn why they're doing it. And so the bioenergetics is really important, and that's what we'll look at with the programming that we're going to look at here in a second. And then we have the muscles that are used in the actions. So if you have a lot of sport, when it comes to the planes of motion, they're multiplanar. So you have sagittal, frontal, transverse, but a lot of sports unilateral. Wouldn't you agree, Brock?
Yeah, for sure.
So we unilateral, Bulgarians and lunges, and those are going to be probably more specific than your standard back squats and leg press and deadlifts. Not saying those are not important, but just make it specific to the sport. And so then you got to look at the injuries that are commonplace. So let's just go back and forth and throw out some random sports, and let's just kind of break some of these down. What do you think? That's a good idea?
Yeah, I like that.
Yep.
So start us off, Diego. Name a sport.
Baseball.
Okay. So what would you say is the energy? So just to reiterate again, when it comes to the bioenergetics, it's never just going to be one. It's usually a breakdown, and they have it in the text. I'll have to look at the page. That's going to be, I think it's chapter 4, but they have a good breakdown. So it's like maybe 10, 90, 30 or whatever it is. So what would you say the bioenergetics breakdown for baseball would be?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it is what are they? It's a phosphagen creatine, right? That's the ATP-PC.
Yep.
So we'll do I'd say like 80 to 90 of that, and then 10 I'm missing the name right now. What's the other one? Is it like anaerobic or
Glycolysis.
Lactate?
Yeah, lactate or glycolysis. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there we go. And then I don't think there's any aerobic really in it.
Yeah,
maybe
not
like
much.
5, if anything.
You always see the no offense, but the fat dudes playing baseball, and I always think it's Cecil Fielder. That guy could just smoke it, and he couldn't really do much. But on page 60 in the text, you're going to see the workload to the rest period. So I would agree with you, Brock. What would you say on that?
Yeah. No, I think you're on point. Like, yeah, it's very anaerobic, phosphagen based, especially when you're talking about pitching, swinging, running bases. Obviously, you can have I can think of something like a catcher, somebody that's in a fixed position like that, needing some muscular endurance that might be a little more glycolytic, because they're in that position minutes at a time. But outside of that, granted, some botch plays or a pickle, you're going to stay in that anaerobic range.
What do you think would be some good exercise to put in there for baseball players?
I was thinking the wood choppers. Wood choppers good. I was thinking like for baseball players, I would say coming up with exercises that really test or really like strength and rate, like far range, like deep ranges of motion, like for the shoulders and everything, really, because they use a lot of torque, I would say, for their shoulders, their upper like on the transverse plane, and just in general, like I guess they're sprinting and stuff like that. They they get down on the ground, they get low, they go high. So maybe even jump squats, I think, would be good, since they're constantly going up and down. Jumping for balls. I'd focus on like exercises that would help sprinting, maybe like some sled pushes and sled pulls.
And we'll put this all together at the end when we look at different sports and what an example of a workout would look like, to also power and conditioning, because we do have a hierarchy. So for example, we wouldn't want to toast the rotational exercises for volume and then get into a power. We want to start with more the power explosive, and then get into the anaerobic aspects. And then also we always need to just reiterate that it's going to be way different working with an elite athlete versus a beginner. So you want to put the specificity into the sport, but if you have a team that's young, start with the foundation. So look at the patterns, strengthen the core, a lot of anterior planks, side planks, really establish that foundation. Then you can progress into the things that will be more rotational power. And one of the better guys to follow with baseball is going to be Eric Cressy, and he's out of Florida, and he's the strength coach for the Yankees. And he's done a lot of fascinating stuff, but he loves the med ball throws against the wall, and just lots of rotation with triple extension on the back end. And anything else you want to throw in there about baseball before we get into injuries, bro?
I think it's baseball, and I'm trying to think of another sport. I mean, golf would probably be another one I can think of that are similar, in the sense that these type of sports are even more like, when you talk specificity, specificity, set demands, like those are so important, because the athleticism part of it is so particular. Like, you might you might be able to get lucky by not having great baseball skills if you're just the best base runner we've ever seen. Right. But outside of that, it's hand-eye coordination, that torque, as Diego was talking about, and ability and rotational ability, which is why some overweight people are very unathletic traditionally, as we think of big, fast, strong, are able to do it. And so in those sports, it is so important as a trainer to make sure you're doing these things. Like I like, again, think of like a golf and how much, stuff Tiger's gone through. And I know early on in his career, he wasn't thinking about the resistance training aspect. Now he's big on it. I mean, if you saw him on his comeback, he went and got jacked like the last few majors. It's because he realized, oh man, if I could actually train some specific things. Yeah, the same thing with baseball. All these athletes might think, as long as I can throw a ball hard or swing for the fences, I might not need it. But when you talk about those specific movements, a swing, a throw, those things are so specific that it's even more important than something like a basketball or soccer, in which fluid movement is so much more involved.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the next part, we look at injuries, and this one's fascinating for baseball players, and we'll look at a couple different aspects. But what are some common injuries that you're going to see with baseball players?
Shoulders.
Shoulder and elbow, rotator cuff, Tommy John.
What's the Tommy John surgery? What are they repairing on that one?
I forget the ligament. It's a ligament in the elbow, though. I know.
Yep. So what's that ligament called? What's that bone called that connects these two?
Radial ulnar. Is it the radial ulnar joint? Yeah.
That's the joint, but the ligaments your UCL.
Oh,
so your ulnar collateral ligament. And that one's a real fascinating one because they brought in statisticians and they looked at sport and they begged the question, why is it that there's so many Tommy John surgeries in baseball? But what other sport is very, very, very similar to baseball with overhead athletes? The rotation, yeah, with golf, but it's a different sport.
Tennis.
Why isn't there a large amount of UCL tears in tennis, but there is in baseball? And so they did this study and they looked at the two. And what do you guys think was the thing that they discovered? And it was an aha moment, like, oh shit, we didn't even realize this, that we understand the mechanics, but there's something that we're doing that is not optimal. What's something that tennis does differently than just part of their sport too?
Their wrist, they use their wrist a lot. So like,
okay. Okay, so, but then you could look at a baseball player and the way that they smack that ball. It's a lot of wrist orientation there. What else? What would you say is the main difference between a baseball player, like a pitcher, and a serve in baseball? Sorry, serve in tennis.
The angle is different.
Angles are a little different, but the big thing that they said, so what about overhead? It's, again, this is like one of those things you learn on your, oh shit, that's so stupid. Why didn't we think about that? But baseball player, what do they do to the ball at the end? They let go of it. Oh. And so when they let go, the eccentric control isn't loaded. With the racket, they hit it. Now they have eccentric control that's loaded. And so you're strengthening that tissue in a way that you're not in baseball. So one thing that they'll do a lot with like long toss and warming up is they'll actually put the ball and they'll tape it in the baseball player's hands and they'll just work on throwing it. And then just that deceleration, and that deceleration, it helps strengthen the ligaments and tendons and the muscles around there. Because as we know, the connective tissue is one of the first things to go. And so we got to look at, for baseball players, at least, it's primarily more upper body injuries. You're going to have lower body injuries. Are there any exercises that you would maybe want to be a little careful of with overhead athletes?
Exercises like military press? Maybe?
Yeah, definitely would be, you'd want to look at the why behind it. Like, why are we doing a 1 rep max military press? Maybe not the best. What would be a better, maybe safer exercise when it comes to a vertical press?
Landmine?
Yeah, landmine is a lot more shoulder friendly due to maybe 110, 120 degrees of shoulder flexion. It has to do with shoulder mechanics and exercises that are out there. And I'm stealing this right from Eric Cressy, and he works with Mike Reinold. And this is really important to link up with great therapists who can help you better understand the injury aspect. So when we had the prehab guys come in over the weekend seminar, and they were looking at the difference in shoulders. And if you were to screen a baseball player, a pitcher, and he's a right-handed thrower, he's going to have, we're supposed to have 90 degrees of ER. Pitcher's going to have like 150. But if you were to try to make him symmetrical, that's going to screw him up, because the right's ER, the left ER, sorry, is going to be restricted because they go together. So if I have here and here, it's going to be it adds up to be the total range of motion that we should have. And the same goes for the hip. So if one has a little bit more, that's okay, as long as the other one is a little restricted. That's how the body's going to work in unison. So Eric Cressy suggests not doing much with bench press. And that's because of what you have to do to the scapulas. When you think of retraction and depression, you're keeping them stable and locked down, as you do want to perform when you're working with a bench press, power lifters. But baseball players aren't power lifters. And you want the scapula and the glenohumeral joint to work in 180 degrees. And the glenohumeral joint can get to roughly 120. And the scapula thoracic one is going to get to the other 60 degrees. So if you lock that down, it's going to be very potentially problematic for a baseball player. So they don't even do, I mean, sure, they screw around occasionally and do it, but more times than not, they're not going to do much with bench press. So that was a nice little analysis right there. Let's throw one more sport out there, and then we'll take a look at the one today. What do you want to throw out there, Brock?
Let's throw out. I'm trying to think of a sport that's a little different, because we're gonna look at wrestling. So I'm trying to think of. Let's throw out anaerobic. I mean, should we throw something super aerobic out there, like a cross country or
sure,
or bike or cycling?
Cycling. Take us through cycling.
Yeah. Cycling. We obviously are in the upper body for the most part, is in a stationary position, but some of the main moves you're gonna have a lot of, obviously, bike rotation. So leg rotation in the bike. So we're gonna obviously have a lot of flexion and extension, similar to running, but without the impact. So a lot of movement of the hips and knees and ankle as well. For the most part, your ankles is stable, but you do want to be able. I've heard, again, I'm not a pro biker by any means, but I heard you do want to make sure your plantar and dorsiflexion as well when you're just talking about pedal movement. But hip, knee, and ankles are doing a lot of movement. Upper body, not necessarily upper body strength isn't a huge thing, but you do want to be able to be stable. You'll notice as their position on the bench or the bike rather might change depending on if they're in a speed portion of it or more of just the coasting portion. But that's kind of the movements needed as far as energy systems. We're looking at very aerobic, obviously oxidative system. As far as I know, there aren't any sprint bike events. That would be interesting to see, though. Kind of mix those two together. But very, very aerobic. I'd say some glycolytic for sure, because you have moments where you have to speed up and slow down. So I don't know exact numbers, but I would guess, I would say anywhere from 70 to 80% aerobic, and then like 20 to 30% glycolytic, because you do have certain periods where you're needing to tap in and go a little faster, but mainly oxidative. Injuries can definitely, with a fixed position, slightly flex of the spine, you can definitely have some back injuries from sitting that long. Obviously, hip and knee injuries can be common. I think that would pretty much be all I would say when it comes to aerobics. It's very, very, very oxidative.
You want to add anything in there? Any other comments about that? No. All righty, so let's take a look at a wrestler. So let's break down. So we got a program, and we're not really gonna analyze it too in depth, because we just want to set the expectations for doing this for a homework assignment. And I get people sending me programs all the time, and they want feedback, and that's what we're here for, to help you analyze it. But we like to kind of set the foundation, so then we can go back, and then we can kind of, okay, this makes sense. I don't know why I put this here. Maybe the volume was too much or the intensity was too much. But now that we understand the fundamentals of programming, then you'll know how you can modify some things. And so wrestling, I'm not an expert wrestler. I'm a big wimp. I've never even been in a fight, so I couldn't tell you the energy demands of the actual match and everything. But we can break down the sport and what's going on there. So how long are the matches? You can just chime in anytime you like to, Marco. You can just go off and mute. And
the matches are seven total of 7 minutes. It's 3 periods. Here in the United States, since we do folk style, so folk style is 3 periods. It's 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. And then for freestyle and Greco, they're 2 periods at 3 minutes apiece. So
which style do they do at a collegiate level?
Folk style.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
High school and collegiate do folk style, but then during the summer months, of course, they all train Olympic style wrestling, which is freestyle and Greco.
Okay. I hear a lot of the Greco stuff, and my favorite wrestler of all time is Brock Lesnar. I loved him. And he was doing some WWE. Let's not confuse that with that type of wrestling, way different. But so we're looking at what energy system would you say would we be primarily in based on what Marco just told us?
I'd say aerobic.
Yeah. No. Say it with confidence, Diego. Say it with confidence. It's definitely aerobic. You're going to be looking at a good amount of it being fatty oxidation. Now, is there a ATP PC component? Is there a need for that?
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not only for the dives, but also, the slams and everything. There's definitely a huge strength in ATP PC component. So you want to be able to mix that in there. And that's why this sport is so fascinating, is because there is a right way to program. I wouldn't want to do a match and then get right into training with weights. You want to make sure that you're prioritizing the demands of the sport. And so what do you, again, this one's kind of broad, but what would be some common injuries?
ACL, anything with the knee, ACL, MCL, PCL, rotator cuff injuries, because when you put them into certain positions, such as a half Nelson, you're torquing on the shoulder to get the head to move, the body to go over. My son actually tore his ACL and had a tear in his meniscus, where they stapled the meniscus back to the bone, and then took his patellar tendon part of the bone to recreate a new ACL out of his own body.
Yep. That's a common one to do. That's always a fun one. How's he holding up now?
He had the surgery back in January of 2020, and he's fully recovered since maybe last November. The doctor his surgeon gave him the go ahead to start back wrestling. So he's been wrestling, but he often complains of tightness in his left, can't think of what it is, IT band, and tightness in his knees. He complains about sometimes, but he's doing pretty well.
So the area of the upper lateral leg is the same one where he had surgery?
Yeah, he had it on the right side. Okay. So I had him, I talked to his physical therapist, and his physical therapist had him doing a lot of work with the lacrosse ball in his QNL and his to work the TFL to get it stronger and loosen it up a little bit, I guess.
Okay. And we don't want to overstep our boundaries. You got to always listen to the therapist. It's nice to have them on your team. We're not diagnosing anything, but why would you guys think that there would be some contralateral leg tightness or difficulties?
Overuse.
Overuse. Like your body's gonna, it's just like Diego said, just your body's gonna go what it's comfortable with. You unconsciously gonna use that leg. Happens a lot. It's happened to me both times. I've had serious leg injuries. You favor the other leg, and I think my internet's a little off. You favor the other leg. The next thing you know, that leg is tied or locking up. So yeah, it's just a overuse thing, and your body being a little more comfortable with that side, feeling that it's a little more stable.
Yeah, definitely. That's a common one. So when we look at the mechanism behind that, could be overuse, lack of strengthening, unilateral stuff. So doing like your airplane exercises to take the knee out of the equation, because if it is upper shank tightness, it could be the fact that the larger, more powerful muscles aren't doing their job. So the lateral portion of the glute med, the glute max on the posterior side. I like doing airplanes, and foam rolling and getting into that tissue is fine, but if we're not strengthening and if we're not addressing why it's tight, then if it just repeats itself. So I take kind of the same approach with foam rolling and stretching. If you do it for a good 3-5 days and it doesn't get better, it's probably not going to do anything. So we need to identify why is it tight. So let's find other areas. So unilateral bridges, maybe it's adductor weakness, maybe it's planking, strong core. It's always tough when you use that words with athletes, strong, because you can have a kid who has a 6-pack and be like, what the fuck, dude, I got a 6-pack, I'm strong. No, we're not making reference to like the aesthetics of it. We're looking at the stability of that area. And then you can also even identify some mobility stuff, like a 90-90 test, I think would be really good to take a look at to see how the internal external rotation is. Because if you're restrictive, so when we look at it, if it was really if the therapist said it's TFL, the TFL, what is that muscle? Where does it start? On the hip, and it's going to be biarticulate. It's going to go down to the knee. It's going to go into the IT band with the glute max and med, and it's going to be an abductor, but also an internal rotator. And so when you test the ERIR of a 90-90, you'd be able to see if you're restrictive in one of those ranges of motion, it's the opposite muscle. So the easiest way to look at it is just look at the shoulders, right? So what is this action called right here?
Flexion.
Flexion, good. So if I can't own my flexion, say I stop here and I start moving my thoracic region, what is probably restrictive? Crickets.
The shoulder, right? The shoulder would be restricted.
Well, that's a big ass area. So what part of the shoulder, what muscle specifically?
Your lats?
Probably your lats, because the lats do the opposite. So if I go for external rotation and I'm limited, then I would want to dig deeper into internal rotation muscles to see if they're restrictive. And so maybe that's where you could identify some mobility issues with the hip because of the injury, but also because of the compensations. Again, we don't know. You have to look at the individual in front of you. And there's different release points of the adductors that I want to get into that can have an impact with the knee. And that's a simple one to do, Marco. You can just have your son do this. It's going to hurt like fucking hell, but you get into the adductor magnus. So your adductor magnus is right here. And you just get your elbow right in there and you drive, and you want to get it to about an 8. It's like I call it your cuss word spot. So once you get that spot, you hold it and you work on your diaphragmatic breathing, hold. And you want to get it down to like a 3 or 4. And that can actually have a release impact with osmotic pressure of the knee and the capsule. So getting into the adductor magnus, you can do it with a thumb, you can do it with a cross ball, and to see if that helps with any pressure relief of the knee. And so when we look at wrestling, what are the main muscles that we're using?
Glutes, quads, hamstrings, core, lumbar muscles, shoulders, everything.
I mean, it really is.
Everything.
You'll even see, this is off topic, but I just remember seeing a really cool exercise one time. and understanding the application to the sport. And I was like, that's fucking bad. That's so cool, because the strength coaches and the experts were applying it to the right level. So we did an intern for a day out at the Rams camp, and dude, one of the biggest dudes I've ever been is Sam Darnold. The dude's a monster. So he's 6'1", like 250. And what they had the strength coach doing is he'd straddle him in this weird position with like his crotch right in his face. And he would take his forehead and push him back as hard as he could. And he was resisting. And they were essentially doing neck exercises for the lineman, which is so applicable, right, for the sport. And so how important the neck is for wrestling. You probably see those old school devices that they have like the chains on their head and they're doing like extensions and flexions and whatever. It's like, that's applicable to the sport because of how important the neck is. You could do neck bridges and a lot of really specific exercises for the neck, but essentially just go through those 9 checkpoints: the ankle, the knee, the hip, the lumbar region, thoracic region, the cervical region, shoulder, elbow, and the wrist, because all of those areas are going to be really engaged with wrestling. And so we have the muscles, we have the energy demands, and then the injuries that are going to take place. So, you know, if we were to start writing out a program here, Brock, how would you want to design that for? Well, first, how many days a week is the wrestling going to be happening, Marco? So how many days a week will they plan on training?
I'd say 3 days in the weight room, and then I think at least 5 days, maybe 4 days on the mat, where they're actually probably going for about an hour and 30 minutes one-on-one with a coach or a drill partner, where they're doing working like on specific positions to get in and out of different positions. And so 3 days in the weight room and then 4 days on the mat. And then they'll have 1 day where they have either a dual meet, tri meet, or a quad,
Okay,
where they'll have 4 teams.
And so this is in season, correct?
Correct. I think you could drop it down to actually 2 days in the weight room, and then the rest is going to be training the actual sport. You don't want to overtax the body with heavy lifting at that point, but I'd say like 3 to 4 during off-season training, and then in-season training, you're probably 2 days in the weight room.
So for those that are following along, you can go into like 450 for the programming aspect, and then you'll get into chapters 21 for the periodization, and you'll be able to see exactly what he was just making reference to with general adaptation syndrome. In your page 588, you're going to see in volume, in season, and where the volume and intensities go. Now, Brock, how would you want to design that? Would you, I know it's just like with weights, there's a lot of variations you can do. Would you suggest those 3 days to be a combination of resistance, power, and conditioning, or would you want to break it up and do 1 day more resistance, 1 day more conditioning, 1 day more power? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I would probably say, especially, obviously we always want to think, what's going to be optimal. So I would say there's two ways you could do it. You could have it rest in between all those lift days, assuming that, and we could either do a combination of, power, kind of volume, power, strength, and endurance in one, but obviously that meaning we're going to do a little less of each time, or you use those 3 days to go, you use those 3 separate days and focus on one of each, which would be more of undularized periodization. So we're talking power day 1, volume endurance day 2, strength, max strength day 3. And I think either isolating each day or kind of doing a combination work. I think it depends on one how much time you have of each, meaning that you're definitely going to need to allocate a little more time if you're doing them all in the same day. And so it probably is a little easier to focus on one each day, especially if the athlete's doing other things as well.
So if we were to break that down, and we said pretty much power, and then you would have volume as a variation, And then you would have like conditioning, anaerobic aspects.
Yeah. And you can assume kind of, I would put power and strength kind of together, maybe power / strength, because although they're different, they're kind of the same energy system.
Okay, so this is where we would start. And then what we would do is we'll begin to break it down. So if we were to write, and we're just going to give examples, and then we want you guys to choose a sport very similar to what we're doing here, and then look at the demands and break it down very similar to this to see what that week or the workouts could be. And as we said, it's going to be case by case. You could have a team that wants the 3 practices to be the exact same. That's data you're going to have to get from the parents / coaches, whoever you're working with at that time. But we're going to design a program based off of what we feel is best for that demand of wrestling. And we're just going to say that they're, moderate to advanced, so they know your basic movements. You don't have to explain them how to do a hinge and a squat, unilateral. So when it comes to a power / strength day, what would you want to do here? Brock?
Some exercise wise.
Mm-hmm.
My computer froze. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah, we got you now. Mm-hmm.
You said from like an exercise standpoint, right?
Yeah. So
I would for sure start, and it's more like most some kind of clean probably.
What would your rep scheme and your volume look like and intensity on that one?
Yeah. So again, general rule of thumb, and we're talking more off season right now, right? Or are we thinking more in season?
With this specific case, I think Marco is making reference to in season.
All right, cool. So yeah, we want to. So general rule of thumb, just with any power exercise, we never really want to go over 5 to 6 reps. That's going to be our high end of reps. Generally, we're going to want to stay to about 1 to 5 reps. About
lost them there for a second.
4 to 5, 3 to 5 reps. Oh,
So,
yeah. So let's say, we never want to go. Hold on. Let me try and.
Well, you're good. You're good now. So would you say 3 by 5 at what percentage?
Exactly. 3 by 5. And we're looking at about, let's say 85%.
So that's a good amount of load there. And then obviously when you see the 85% and the 5 reps, we want to be resting usually a minimum of 2 to 3 minutes. So make sure that's we're not pushing through those, because you can have someone not rest long enough, and then we're defeating the purpose of the workouts and conditioning.
Real quick, I had a question for Barack. Now, Barack, is this going to be based off of weights? Because my son particular is in a larger on the larger side of the weight scale. Yeah. He's going to be wrestling at 197 pounds. So we're talking 197 to 2. After that, it jumps up to 2, all the way up to 285. Yeah. And so 84, 97, and then 285 heavyweight. Those are the real larger weights. Would you do something different for, say, somebody who is on the lower scale of 125, 132, 157, 165 area?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't. So again, it's gonna be the same training now. Again, yet we obviously have to take, for example, with wrestling, we obviously have to take weight demands, and meaning somebody that needs to make weight or lose weight. So in this portion, no, it's always going to be the same. So we want to think this is power output. Every single one of them needs optimal power output. So their program is going to look the same in this instance. Now, where it could vary, let's say your son who's maybe needing to make weight or cut weight at the end, maybe he's doing a little bit more metabolic conditioning towards the end, or maybe somebody at the 125 pound mark, or somebody that maybe, let's say, it struggles to maintain and is always looking for a surplus or gaining weight, then yeah, maybe they'll have less metcon towards the end and more volume. But especially when we're talking like the bulk and kind of the main chunk of the program, especially the power, strength aspect, it's going to look the same for all those athletes, because ultimately their goal all should be able to have the most power they can exert during that match.
Got it.
And so do you, for power cleans, correct me if I'm wrong, you typically like just to do those as straight sets. We don't like to piggyback much any accessory, any A or B work with that, right?
Yeah, Tristan, especially not in season. Like if this was some preseason work, for sure throw it in with something, ballistic dynamic, even though we'd still be resting properly. But yeah, if there's something like traditionally like what NSCA would take you through for the CSCS, they'd call it more of that preseason phase. You can add in some real supersets where you're doing a power clean and maybe a short sprint or some jumps.
Okay.
But yeah, in the season, we're thinking peaking and maintenance here. We'd want to do that in a block by itself.
And these are what we will do warm-ups, and then you'll get into your 3 working sets of 5. And so then what would you want to do next?
Probably one more power. I'd say something, since that's more lower body post chain, maybe something like a push press next.
You prefer the push press over push jerk, or?
I like let's say push jerk. I mean, if they're competent, push jerk. But yeah, starting off push press.
And what would you like there? 3?
Yep, let's say 3, 4.
3 by 4 or 4 sets?
No, 3 by 4. Same,
Oh, okay. And then same percentage?
Yes, we'll keep same percentage, 85, and we can always progress from there. But let's start 85. And as we're going in this, I kind of touched on it a little bit just now, but I see Mark, he asked in the chat, out of curiosity, what would season or in season or off season differ on rep scheme, volume? So yeah, volume more than anything. So Mark, I always think, or anybody think, off season we don't have as much skills training as we're gonna have in season. Think games and matches. A sport like wrestling has consistent matches. Soccer, I mean, pretty much every sport when you're talking game, that is going to become more of the focus. So the resistance training aspect is going to get smaller and smaller as we get in season. So as you see here, like, I'm not really going to recommend more than 3 sets at a time doing something in season, because the athletes have so much more going. They have skills training, they have practice, they have meets. So that's going to differ a lot. Whereas in the off season, if one of my athletes is like, hey, I want to gain a lot of weight or lose a lot of weight, we can really push. We can add volume. We could add more. We can add a whole lot more overall, because we don't have to make sure they're fully recovered in that top performance for the game. So off season is going to be where you focus on things that are a little less. They're still relevant, but not game focused. So not as much power, things like that. All right, cool.
And same with this one. Just keep it as a straight set.
Yeah, we'll keep it as a straight set.
Okay.
And are we? I can't remember. I think I lost a little. So are we doing it? Are we going to split them into 3 days? Focus on just this day.
Yeah. So this will just be your power straight day.
All right. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, now I'm probably at this point, we've covered what I really need to in power aspect. Again, we're in season. So again, I'm trying to I want to make sure I cover everything. So next, I'm probably going to go strength focus. So let's say maybe some kind of squat here. Yeah, I'll go squat. I mean, I like front squats, but back squats are beneficial as well. So we'll go squat here. Still, again, staying in more of a strength range. So let's say 3 by 6 here at about 80%.
Quick question.
Yep.
You said squat. Can you do a variation, say a Zercher squat?
Yeah, that's great. So again, I'm big, and you'll see a lot of coaches I'm big in the movement patterns. So yeah, you might have an athlete that can benefit from one versus another. For example, I might have one athlete that has some hip mobility problems compared to another. So maybe I'll box squat him, or I probably won't back squat him because that one's going to require a little bit more movement. Or yeah, somebody that can benefit from a Zercher. It'll help with their posture and their angle. So yeah, that's why I like to keep it a squat, and us or you as the strength and conditioning coach can decide which type of squat might be best for this athlete. So yeah, don't ever feel, especially when it comes to our big movement patterns, don't ever feel that you have to be limited to just one type of squat.
Right. Now the The only reason I said Zercher squat because it in my opinion, after watching wrestling and watching this for years, it seems that the Zercher squat would help them in their defensive posture when they go and get into underhooks,
Yep.
double underhooks, catching somebody who's trying to shoot in on a double leg. They can catch them with that double underhook and
Yep.
then take them into a move where they put them straight to their back.
Yep.
If they're doing Zercher squat, that translates over a little bit better, in my opinion. But
And so, Brock, what would you say about? I know that there's flaws within any textbook, and I like making fun of other ones more than, but I still think there's flaws within the CSCS in the sense that, you know, you could. What would your thoughts be on something like, because the limiting factor with the Zercher is going to be your forearm strength and your ability to hold the weight here. And then also you may put, like, you know, working with Dr. Waterbury, he doesn't like this position because it puts the bicep tendon into a more precarious situation that could be not good for the individual. But with just saying that you do screen them and they're okay, what about doing 2x6 at 80 and then doing one for 10 at 60 or 70%? What would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, I like that, especially in a sport like this where we know the endurance or just kind of that volume can help. So I like that a lot. And yeah, kind of just following up on that too. Like, yeah, Marco, I like where your head's at. I like the specificity aspect of it. And yeah, you're gonna have some athletes. I say kind of those guys that they're just killers. They're good. They're able to do anything and catch on quick. But yeah, some might have limited range of motion. But yeah, with that specificity, even translated, maybe instead of doing that on our power strength day where we're lifting heavy, maybe we do that on like a Metcon day. Where we're doing maybe some lightweighted squats and squats for time. We have them focused on staying in that Zercher position because metabolically, that's going to be like a little more specific to how the sport would be. Because yeah, in theory, they're never holding an excessive amount of weight, at least steady at once. Obviously, a person's body weight, but I would say even thinking specificity, doing it on a different day where the strength or the max strength and power days are going to be the ones you probably want to stay the most stable and static on and get a little more creative on more of your Metcon or volume days.
Okay, that's good. So would you pair this up with an A or B?
Yeah, I'd probably pair this up. That's lower body, so maybe like an upper body pull. So let's say maybe some kind of row. I like bent over rows just for the trunk stability and strength.
Same scheme here?
We could go 6 to 8 here, but yeah, I'd keep let's keep it around there for now, just so we're focusing on that day. And then probably one more accessory to finish the day here is what I would do. Maybe like we haven't done unilateral yet, so let's throw that in. Maybe a single leg deadlift.
Three by what?
Well, let's say 3 by 8 each, because now we're in our accessory where we don't have to necessarily keep the form format, and then pair that up with another isolated upper body, maybe a tricep.
What about like a landmine press?
Yeah, I like landmine. Actually, yeah.
All right, so then we got to push, we got to pull, get even that out. So then that would be our power day. And we'll hum through these next ones just for time's sake. But if we were to do volume, what would the volume day look like?
Yeah. So the volume day, we're gonna look. So again, this is gonna get more into as we said, volume. So again, let's maybe switch it up a little bit from day one. I was gonna say trap bar, but I guess we could just say something like a deadlift, just in case they don't have the trap bar.
Sumo style, whatever. And what would you want your
3 by 10
higher on this one, or
3 by 10 to 12?
Yeah.
Let's go into a bench press next.
As a 2 or an
A? I would probably go with maybe we could do an ab exercise as the A.
Okay, here. So then do like some planks or something.
Yeah, let's go with a plank here.
You can do it for time, whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Then we go into a bench here, bench or dumbbell press. Again, I'm not, it doesn't have to be static. Let's go, same scheme here, 3 by 10 to 12. Maybe pair that with a pull, a lat pull down or a pull up. Yep, chin up.
Like a max here?
Yep, 3 by max here. Let's go into a goblet. Someone got a goblet here. Let's increase the reps here, maybe 15 here, lighter weight, more volume. I like a unilateral, maybe arm here, maybe like a dump, maybe like a, we got landmine and others, maybe something unilateral upper body, I'm thinking here.
Like a cable row or a row variation or?
Yeah, row variation, I like row variation.
Could you do a landmine row into a press?
Yep, I like that. I like that. I would even do that as more of a variation on this power day, because maybe even instead of the push jerk, maybe week 2 or the next time you do it, you do a landmine clean to press.
Okay. So like the metal row into a clean and press on the landmine, so you get that rotational movement in the transverse plane, correct?
Yes, sir. I like it a lot. I recommend putting it on like that, the more the power focused day. But whatever day you put it, you can even start. Let's say you start your Metcon day with one movement of that nature. I would just say just ensure that they're not getting over 4 to 5 reps each arm on that, because that is a very neural power-based exercise.
And then what do you want to do a 4 here, or is it enough?
Yeah, let's do a 4. We'll go isolated, maybe something like some isolated hams, like some Nordics. And then maybe just like some like close grip push-ups or some kind of triceps finisher.
And then what would our Metcon day look like?
All right, so so this is the day we're gonna work on our, more of our conditioning drills or get our heart rate up. So, you can still throw in something, metabolic, because power is metabolic to start. So let's maybe start with that, just that press he talked about. Let's say landmine clean the press. We can put notes to. Then we pair that up with a landmine. Just twist. I call it landmine twist. I don't know if it has a real name.
Yep.
Then we can get into some more. Now we're talking more. Get our heart rate up. Let's maybe do something like almost like a CrossFit type stage. So maybe like dumbbell thrusters and burpees.
So you're talking about the devil presses?
Yeah, the dumbbell squat to press.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
So it's a burpee, then you bring it up and press it, bring it back down.
The squat thruster is just going to be a squat to press with with a lightweighted dumbbell. Then we'll pair it up with the burpee, which you're dropping right into that. And so again, for metabolic, we can talk about doing those for time. So maybe 30 seconds of each. So maybe 3 to 4 sets of 30 seconds.
3 rounds, okay.
And then I would say something here, maybe even look sport specific. Maybe Marco, you can answer here. What's some common finishers or things y'all like to do to get the heart rate up in wrestling?
Well, I mean, it's similar to a boxer where they get in the mirror and they shadow box, but for wrestlers, it would be shadow wrestling. And usually at that point in time, like you put them, they could do banded, where they mimic the shot in to a down block, things of that nature, and they do it for the time of each round or each period in wrestling. So
Yeah.
3 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Or they could do some type of skipping of rope.
Yeah. I like that. Shadow wrestling paired up with some jump rope.
Mhm.
Maybe let's pair that up with ab. I like his core is important here too. Let's go ab. Let's go. I see in the notes Chris has sent us. We had like a barbell ab rollout. So let's just say that for the super. Yeah, we go with like some rollouts and maybe like one other. We could even, Chris, I was saying we could even do it. Maybe the shadow wrestling is paired up with the rollout, and then we do the jump rope paired up with another ab exercise, just so they're kind of going from Metcon to abs. So yeah, we go barbell ab rollouts there. And then we go, jump rope, finish it out with maybe like a side plank or some kind of ab. So again,
Side plank. Like this. And so you guys can really see the difference in the days where you have more power specific and look at the patterns, look at the muscles that are working. We wouldn't want to be doing like our single leg deadlift first. We wouldn't want to be doing our squat 3x6 first on this day, because we want to focus on the ATP PC, which is going to be maximal output, resting accordingly. So you can make an argument for the, wrestling is more aerobic. Yes, but for this portion, because of the demands, we want it to be high output, heavy weight, but then you want to rest accordingly. Got the jerks, which would be upper body power, and then we're going to get lower body, upper body work there for strength, and then we finish
Chris,
off.
I gotta run because I got a 5 o'clock appointment. But I just want to say, for you, those who aren't usually in the class, feel free to reach out. Chris has my info, but just always remember, like always when you're programming for athletes, think about, what's specific to the sport, like the needs analysis we talked about, and just rest and recovery. So obviously we're not going to want to overdo them with we're not going to do 3 power days or 3 volume days. We're going to do each so that they're ready for their sport specific activity, but they're still able to keep their peak and their maintenance and rest optimally and recover properly.
Thank you for this, Brock. This is awesome.
Talk to every one of y'all soon, man.
All righty, have a good one. So with that being said, what we'll do for homework on Monday, we have one more. We have Monday and Thursday next week, and then we'll start the new CSCS class, which will be getting into chapter 1, going everything. Each time we do these, just like when we first started our other classes, they're always getting better. So the first class that we had was with Juan. He was one of our first guys that we had to pass the CSCS within 90 days. We're doing a lot more of the specificity of different sports, so then we can help you guys get a better understanding of what that looks like. So this was a great day of looking at different sports, breaking down the needs analysis. Remember the muscles that are used, the actions and the joints, bioenergetics, and then the injuries, and then designing a program for that athlete. And this was an in-season wrestler with a power strength day, volume day, and a Metcon day. Do you guys or girls have any questions about anything that we did today?
Solid.
Good. All right, you can just go back in and cross-reference this with any type of programs that you've dealt or you've worked with before, and also put this in your bank, because if you come across a coach who says, I'd love to see what a in-season workout looks like, then you have it on file now. Then you can have maybe work on some off-season and have little variants for someone who wants to put some size on, or someone who wants to gain some, lose some weight. So, all righty, you guys and girls, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you later.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.